All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're so happy to have you here with us talking about our Alexandria webinar for inventory today. Go ahead and get a few things on here. Hi, nice to see everybody. My name is Jake Vanderlinden, and I'm going to be your host through our Alexandria version 6 webinar this morning. With me, as always, I've got Josh Hutchings. He's going to be helping me out with the QA, polling, all of that kind of stuff, just making sure that we're getting all your questions answered during the workshop today. First of all, guys, we're really excited to get you in here with us, get a little bit more information out about inventory, how to use Alexandria to really manage and keep your collection up to date. And just as a quick overview, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics. Okay, we're going to go through Inventory Manager, talk about all the different steps and setup. We're also going to talk about inventorying through circulation and all of the manual things that you're going to be doing there. On top of this today, guys, we're going to be talking some theory and ideas behind doing inventory, what it's for, what you're going to be looking to do, and how to do some of those outlier processes like maybe weeding, cleaning up your collection, reshelving, reorganizing. Maybe you're looking to do that big genreification project and start reshelving all of your materials. So you can use your inventory here to start isolating those things. The first thing that we want to start off with, though, guys, is we want to talk about just inventory, and we will start off in inventory management, but the first thing is we want to talk a little bit about inventory theory here. So what we're going to be doing with our inventory. To do this, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to our program here really quick. So if you guys don't have it, be sure that you do have the Alexandria installed librarian workstation with your version 6 program ready to go. And the first thing that we want to talk about is, why are we looking to do inventory? The biggest and most common reason for this is because it's extremely important to know exactly what items and how many of them we have in our collection. If people are going to be placing holds, they're going to be placing reservations, it's great to make sure that the materials that they're actually looking at are the things that are actually in your collection, available on your shelves. Even if they're currently checked out by another patron, it's really important to know whether or not we have those physical copies. One of the great things in Alexandria, though, guys, is how we perform inventory. Alexandria does what's called a date-based inventory. What this means, and let me go ahead and grab an item that actually has a book here really quick. Here we go, our One World manga. We got 3 copies. So when I go in and look at my copy information, I've got an accession date being the day that the item was added, but I've also got an inventory date marker on the individual copies. Basically, this is letting me know this book was last seen and scanned January 13th of 2009. Okay, so by Alexandria doing an inventory date-based inventory, this means that you can keep performing transactions. You can check out items to your students or your visitors. You can check your items back in. You can go through and weed and clean up the collection, all while simultaneously performing your inventory. The biggest thing is remembering what day you started scanning your inventory, and that's because this will be the date that you're going to use in the creation of all of your reports, all of your utilities, and things of that nature. Okay, so biggest thing when doing inventory out in Alexandria, remember the very first day you started scanning. Okay, that even means if you're breaking it up into different sections, I'm doing fiction today, nonfiction tomorrow, go ahead and write down that first day that you started scanning for inventory, not first day of each section, the first day that you started scanning. Okay. After that, basically by using that date and then going through the day that you're completing, if it's tomorrow, next week, a month from now, whatever that inventory start date is, the ending date will be the day that you're going in to run the utilities, run those operations, and then anything scanned within that range will be accounted for in your inventory and reflected in all of your reports. So when it comes to doing things while you're doing inventory, like say you want to weed your collection, you want to go ahead and reshelve, that genreification thing that we were mentioning a little bit ago, some of the things that you can do with this is be sure to use your system patrons. So for instance, we have our lost copies patron, our discarded copies patron, and so on. All of these patrons can be used when performing inventory to get additional messages and alert tones coming from your computer to make sure that you're able to grab those items, set them aside for weeding, put them back in proper call number order, whatever you might be looking to do. Okay, so one of the big things with your collection, guys, is don't forget to make things like your weeding notes. So as you can see here, I've got items that are currently in my discarded section for weeding. I can see that by coming in here and looking at my details. Then, whether I'm scanning in my circulation window here, or if I'm using my inventory manager, I can get those alert tones and know to address those items as I'm going. All right, so with that, everyone, We're going to go ahead and start off today's training by actually going into the inventory manager, as that's kind of the preferred method that we use here at Alexandria for performing inventory. Okay, so if you're one of those circulation-based inventory people, we'll be coming back to that here in just a few minutes. Now, as I go into our inventory module, just remember everyone that's found in your toolbox. So we're going to go into tools. We're going to go into inventory. And then with version 6, that inventory module does open up in the web. Okay, so don't forget, it's going to open up in your preferred web browser that you've currently got set up with your operating system. And then you'll jump right into that. Now, one additional side note to version 6 customers, guys. If you're doing circulation-based inventory, don't forget that you do have the online web librarian, and you can perform your inventory in this window as well. We're going to come back to that here in just a minute when we start talking about the actual inventory in circulation. Now, as for our inventory manager here, the first thing that I want to talk about is what the inventory manager is for. Essentially, the inventory manager is here to give you a guided step-by-step process in performing and completing your inventory. This little intro section here has a great little video. This is going to show you all of the different things that you can do with the inventory manager. Go ahead and feel free to watch that at any time. We will be updating these videos here in the near future from our training department. But this page just has tons of good information to get you started with that inventory session. Really, the biggest part, though, is on the Sessions tab where we're going to get started. And the first thing that I want to talk about here, guys, is when you're starting your inventory, what are we going to do in here? All right. Here at Alexandria, we strongly recommend the first thing that you should do when you're setting up your inventory is plan out how you're going to do your inventory. Am I going to try to do it all in one day? Do I want to scan it all in one giant collection? Or do I want to break it up into different groupings as indicated here with our demo database? Now, once you've kind of started planning that out, how many sections you're going to have, if you're going to have any aids, what parts they might be helping you scan, the first step from that planning portion is then creating all of your sessions. Okay, so as you can see, we can come in here, we've got all of these things listed. So day one, we're going to be creating anything additional. Maybe I've got a specific biographies section that's managed by my policies biography. Okay, so I can come in here and I'm just going to make sure that I'm setting up and creating all of those sessions. Now, during the session creation, guys, a couple of things to keep in mind. You have options for either setting up a call number range in the from or through options, or having the session include the entire collection. Okay, these are the two biggest features that you're going to use. I'm just going to go ahead and say includes everything for now, just in this example. The audible alerts and checkboxes below this one are for additional functionality. So this one right here, audible alerts when inventorying items checked out to system patrons, we're going to go ahead and turn that on. The reason for this, guys, is when we come across those weeding items, the discards, the lost items, I want to make sure that I can address those during my scanning. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's turned on. Audible alerts are when items are out of call number order. If I'm using a call number range, as in these examples over here, fiction AAA through GZZ, this one will give additional alert tones letting you know to reshelve those items and get them in proper call number order. Okay. In the case that you're looking for items on a specific policy, you can go ahead and turn on audible alerts for that as well. The last option is the book drop mode. So by default, typically we do like to book drop items back into the system as available when we're performing an inventory. So you can go ahead and turn this on or off. Now, the one thing that it will skip over with book dropping, guys, is items that are discarded, archived, or in the for library use system patrons. Okay, so that's patron number 2, patron number 7, and patron number 8. All right. So those ones will be skipped. It's because you have already identified those in a section that you don't want them to be changed for. Anything lost, on repair, in processing, transit, all of those things will be book dropped into the system as available. Okay. Once you've gone ahead and specified all of your settings, you'll go ahead and hit save. And as you can see, that goes ahead and just drops that option right in the listing here on the left. Okay. So again, guys, day one, plan out your inventory. Come in here and get all of your sessions created. Okay. Now, once you've got all your sessions created, we're going to go ahead and pick one and we're going to get started scanning. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. And guys, I do apologize. You're going to hear some additional background noises, but today we're using a scanner. So just bear with us on the beeps. All right. So as I mentioned, we grab our session and we're going to go ahead and start scanning, just like so. Now, as you can see here, we are running into a few things. We're outside of our call number range as indicated by the session. Some of these things we're just going to work with today, guys. I did grab a random collection of barcode numbers to work with for our items, so we might see some of these notes. Don't worry about those ones. The bigger ones are in a case like a discarded item here. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, as soon as we scanned our item, we get two messages: lost item found, so it was a lost copy that's going to get book dropped back in when we complete it. And we're also going to get that message letting us know that, hey, we are kind of outside of call number range. Now, currently, guys, we do have the computer audio turned off. We don't want to be giving you guys feedback during our training today. But for these lost items, for these discarded items, your computer will be giving you a different alert tone. Okay, you can set a preference for this tone in the preferences section of the program. So just keep your ear out for any time that those beeps or sounds are a little bit different, because it's usually indicating that you've got a message or something to address for that item you just scanned. Okay. Now, once you've started scanning, never fear. If you don't have enough time today to complete that section, if you're planning on this taking several days, the beautiful part with the Alexandria Inventory Manager is that at any time we can go ahead and close out of that session. We can go home, come back in the next day. From Alexandria, go right back up into Tools and into Inventory. And then we can come right back into our session. So our fiction AAA through GZZ. And we're going to go ahead and continue. Okay. In here, we've got everything. We can see the last item that was scanned. So while we're looking at that shelf, we can find that book, The Army in Action, and then just go ahead and start scanning right from the next item. And so on. Okay. So scanning into the Inventory Manager is wonderful. It makes it really easy to find out what you're doing, see things in the proper order. And then the great thing here, guys, is that because we are setting everything up right from the get-go, if you've got any helpers, maybe you've got some parent volunteers coming in or some student volunteers coming in to help you out, go ahead and assign each section. So long as you've got enough hardware, so enough laptop computers, iPads, scanners, anything that you can use to input the information into these windows, you can go ahead and tell people, hey, this is your section, go ahead and continue, start scanning, and things will go from there. Okay, so the beautiful thing again, guys, create all the sessions that you need, start scanning. If you're not done, close out, come back and pick it up from where you left off. Okay. Once you've finished scanning for any individual section, the next step is going to be continuing on and going into our review and exceptions area. Okay, so under our exceptions area, this is where we can see anything with regards to what we've been scanning. Okay, so if we've got items out of call number order, oops, we're in the wrong session here. Let's get back into the right one. And one great navigation feature of the manager, guys, is you can always navigate directly to a part of the Inventory Manager by clicking on the tab up here at the top of the page. So if I want to go into exceptions, you can just click on exceptions right there. Now in here, as I've been scanning my items, the database has been tracking things for me. So I was picking a specific call number range. Unfortunately, all my items thus far have kind of been outside of that range. So when I come in and look at my exceptions, I can actually generate a quick little report showing me all of those details. And if I wanted to print that off to have a hard copy of it to maybe go look at the items on the shelf and get them back in call number order, I can go ahead and print that right here from the exceptions area. Okay, any one of these exception line items is a list option. So if I come in here and want to see items that were lost during inventory, I can go ahead and see those items in a very simple list there. With our system patrons, primarily the discarded, archived, and library use items, excuse me, those ones will generate their own lists so that you can confirm those weeded items as you're scanning those different sections. Okay. The great thing with exceptions, guys, is this is a wonderful place to, again, come in and do a little bit of review. If you're seeing that you're missing items, maybe unsure about items being out of order, at any time you can go ahead and come back to inventory, rescan, grab those items that you missed. Even in the case of items that were checked out to students getting checked back in, guys, you can go ahead and process those in through your circulation window. And then when you get into the review steps, don't forget that those are going to show up on your reports as well, because in the review, where the exceptions is dealing with the items that were scanned in the inventory session, the review, when we get into that area, is going to deal with the inventory date markers and items that were and were not scanned in between the start date and the current date of the session. Okay, so exceptions are great. They refer to only the scanning of that particular section. Review is going to give you way more information just regarding the overall collection information. Okay. Now with coming into review, as you can see here, we've got checkboxes for all of the different reports that we can perform here in Alexandria. Now, all of these things, again, are based off of certain criteria. So inventoried items, this is going to be a list of items that should have been sitting on the shelf and available at the time of scanning. And so long as they did get scanned, they're going to show up on this report. Our missing items, these are the items that, according to Alexandria, should be on the shelf and available, but did not get scanned during inventory. This is usually the most common report that people are looking for, because this is the report that you're going to run to then go out, spot check any items, come back into the inventory section, and then scan those to get that inventory marker updated on that item. Okay. Now, the reason that these reports are so powerful, everyone, is because whatever criteria we set up under the session creation, if we put in call number ranges, if we put in any kind of policy indicator, all of those things will be applied to the reports directly, saving you all that time of needing to go in, create the reports manually, make sure that you've got the proper select bys and display criteria. Alexandria does all of that for you here in the review step. This is one of the key things that makes the inventory manager so useful when it comes to performing your inventory. Now, once we've gotten to this review step here, guys, let's say that we've gone through everything fiction A through fiction GZZ. The last thing that we're going to do is, once we've ran all of our reports, we're going to go ahead and park this session. So we can go ahead and come into the continue section. However, when it comes to completing inventory in the inventory manager, we strongly recommend saving this step for the very end and completing all sessions on the last day. So once I've gotten to that review step, I've ran my reports, I've gone back and spot checked everything. I'm then going to go ahead and park this session. I'm going to come in and grab my next session, and then I'm going to start scanning for that one. Now, the reason for this, guys, is because by creating all sessions on the first day and completing all sessions on the last day, any items that could fall into overlapping call number ranges, overlapping policies, anything along those lines, is going to make sure that it's not checked out to inventory because you completed a session a day earlier than another one. Okay. Again, those inventory dates are the most important thing to performing inventory, and even one day's difference. Completing session AAA through GZZ today, and then completing section HAA through OZZ tomorrow. If there's any overlap between items that could fall into both of those categories, one of them could be checked out to lost and not the other one. Okay, so again, very important, day one creation, last day completion. You don't have to do all sessions on the same day. It's as long as it's going to take you. Okay. Now, once you've done all of those, so I've scanned everything in this one, HA through OZZ, PA through ZZZ, etc. So on my very last day, guys, basically it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select the utilities that I would like to run. Now, the first one, recall items inventoried that are checked out to non-system patrons. So basically this means we can set up a notice to be emailed to our students or any of our visitors, letting them know that they still have items checked out when I'm doing my inventory, and they need to get those brought back. Okay. The declare missing items as lost. This is the one that says any of those items that said they should be on the shelf and available but did not get scanned. We're going to go ahead and drop those in the lost category. Okay. The last checkbox takes any items that are still checked out to patrons, and it's going to go ahead and mark those lost as well. Basically saying maybe this is the end of the school year. Those items might not come back after I've completed inventory. We'll mark them lost and actually apply the lost charges to the patron record right following the inventory session here. Okay. So I'd come in, I'd select the options that I'm looking for, and then go ahead and select complete session. Now, one thing when you complete sessions, guys, you're going to get some messages letting you know certain items are going to be missing, Go ahead and review this. If anything looks incorrect, you're going to want to go ahead and cancel at that time. Otherwise, we'll simply hit complete session. I'm going to end up with a lot of items in my lost category, but that's all right. And then when I go back to my sessions tab, you can see that top line item has been removed. Essentially, once I've completed a session, guys, there's no way of going back and scanning any additional items into that session, okay? Again, this is why we kind of say keep that completion step till the very end, all right? Because if I've completed a session, had some issues, and want to rescan some items, I unfortunately can't. Now, you can go into your circulation window and rescan those items that you missed during the session specifically, just to do that little bit of cleanup, bring them back from the lost category to available, things of that nature. Otherwise, again, complete all of those sessions on the very last day. Make sure that you've done any of those review steps prior to. Okay, so that's the inventory manager in a nutshell, guys. There is a tool down here, and really going to need to use this one if you're kind of not following those guidelines of using day one to create all sessions, okay? If you are just creating sessions periodically as you're coming up with them, before you get into that complete step, go ahead and grab a session and go ahead and get those modified session dates in there to make sure that everything kind of has the same start date. That way you're going to, you know, limit that possibility of items with overlap causing problems upon the completion, okay? So inventory manager, extremely powerful, very user-friendly. It's a great tool for coming across all of those discarded items, lost items, and getting them weeded out during the time of inventory. But overall, if you're used to doing inventory in a couple of different ways, this isn't the end-all be-all tool for you. All right, I definitely recommend giving it a try. But for now, if you've already done an inventory or already have some processes in place, go ahead and stick with what you know, okay? Now, before we jump into the circulation side of performing inventory, I do want to check with Josh. Josh, any questions that we should address here really quick through the inventory manager side?
Jake, yes, thank you. That is a very good stopping point for a quick question. Lee Roberts wanted to know, can you show how to discard an item as you scan during inventory?
Great question, Lee. So unfortunately, you can't mark an item discarded while you're doing inventory, okay? Really, you need to get those items marked into that discarded category before you begin inventory. That way, when you're doing your scanning, so as we mentioned, I come in here, I'm just gonna go ahead and scan an item that I know is discarded here really quick, guys. So 1 second, there we go. So as you can see, I scanned an item and it just pops up saying, this is checked out to the discarded copies, Lee. So when I'm scanning, I can't say discard this item at this time. Now, if you're doing inventory through the circulation window, you can go ahead and change modes that way to say, I scanned this item for inventory, now I want to scan it to discard. We'll talk about that here in just 1 second. Josh, if you wouldn't mind reminding me when we're looking at that, just to keep it fresh if I forget it. But Lee, when it comes to using the inventory manager, you do need to have the items discarded prior to scanning for inventory to make use of any of those additional features, okay? So, but we'll answer the other side of your question here in just a second. Josh, any other questions on inventory manager?
Yeah, Lisa Farley did want to know, can sessions be genre and copy location instead of call number?
So Lisa, great question when it comes to creating your sessions in the inventory manager. With the Alexandria version 6 inventory manager, we don't have options for genre. Basically, you've got call number, entire collection, or some policy controls. Policy is really only going to give you alert notifications is all that it's going to do. If you would like to see some of the more robust things that we've added into our version 7 inventory manager, take a look at the video that we're going to do off of that session a little bit later this afternoon, and you'll see the extra things that we are going to bring in, because all additional selection options are in the version 7 inventory manager. Unfortunately, what you see here in version 6 is about all that you're going to have, unless you go with an upgrade, or excuse me, a switch to version 7. So call numbers, entire session, or you know, just audible alerts when outside of a policy grouping are about the only thing that you can do. If you want to, though, like you said, if you're doing policies, so if your policy setup is by genre, for instance, that can kind of help by giving you that alert tone. But other than that, there is not a genre select by for the inventory manager. Let's do one more quick question, Josh, if we have one. If not, we'll go ahead and jump into circulation.
That should be perfect.
That's got it. Okay, wonderful. Okay, guys, thank you for getting those questions in. We're going to keep diving into those questions as we're moving through the program. Again, there will be one more quick question wrap up at the very end. So keep getting those in here and we'll just address them as they come in. All right. But for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about circulation inventory. As we refer to it here at Alexandria, this is kind of what we refer to as our manual inventory process. Pardon me 1 second, everyone. There we go. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Had a little frog in my throat there and didn't want to cough in everybody's ear. So when it comes to doing inventory in the Alexandria circulation window, the biggest difference between the two is that all of the reporting and utilities are on you as the user. This means that, you know, again, most important thing, write down what day you started scanning your inventory. All right. That is going to be day one, not the day that I started scanning for fiction or the day that I started scanning for nonfiction. It's the day I started scanning for inventory. Going to be the most important thing when doing inventory here in circulation. Now, other than that, the next thing is which mode would you like to do? Now, and again, I'm going to stress, guys, it never hurts to have a game plan when approaching your inventory. Even if you're just going to be scanning right into the circulation window, going end to end, every item, not worrying about this specific section or anything like that, have a little bit of a game plan. What day am I going to start? Am I going to have any aids? Do I need to break the collection up into different pieces for those people that are going to be scanning? Okay. Always having a little bit of a game plan is definitely a bonus. After that, the next step is coming in and setting up our circulation window with one of our inventory modes. Now, here under the mode pull down, you can see that we've got inventory, inventory book drop, and then both of those in a suppressed mode as well. Now, the biggest difference between the two is really the book drop versus non-book drop. The suppressed versus non-suppressed is more regarding some of those specialty features, like if I want to weed my collection when doing inventory, I want to make sure that I'm using a non-suppressed mode in order to get those additional alert tones, information, you know, other things regarding those items. Okay. Again, here at Alexandria, we usually always recommend using a book drop mode when performing inventory. This way, when you're scanning those items, it's going to book drop anything that was in that lost category back into the system as available for checkout. Same thing with any items that are still checked out to visitors and things like that. Okay. Now, once I've got my mode picked out here, again, I'm going to go ahead and use inventory book drop. I just go ahead and start scanning my items. And again, guys, sorry about the noises, but we are using a scanner. Now, when we see our items come up, as you can see, we get a publication date. We can see the last use date, meaning the last time the item was checked out, the accession date, lifetime to date usage. That's what this here means, guys. LTD, life to date usage. So this item's only been checked out one time. So now, Lee, in the case that you were talking about wanting to weed items as you're doing your inventory, so I scan this item, I get this little bit of information, I'm ready to weed this out of here. I'm going to go ahead and come in here and I can change modes. I'm going to change to discard mode. I'm going to say that I'm weeding that item. And then I'm going to go ahead and scan that into my discarded section. Okay. Once I've done that weeded note, go ahead and set this back up for inventory book drop. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to type in IB to start my inventory book drop mode and hit enter. And then I'm going to go ahead and scan my next item for inventory. And so on. Okay. So you'll just go ahead and start scanning. Now, in the case that you come across those lost, discarded items, things of that nature, you're going to get some additional messaging. So right here, this book, barcode right here, the book A Child Called It, has been lost. Has it been found? Maybe it was lost because a student didn't get it returned, but it's on the shelf. I just missed it. I'm going to go ahead and drop that back in. My lost copy count's going to go down. That item's going to now show an available status. And then I can move on to the next one. Oh, there's my lost item. Again, I'm going to go ahead and scan that in, make it available. All right. Now, in the case of your discarded copies, this one's a little bit trickier because with discarded copies, you usually do not want to check that one back in and book drop it because we're looking to weed. So I get the same thing. This book has been registered as discarded. Has it been re-entered? I'm going to go ahead and say no. But because I got that extra message, I'm going to know to set that book aside, maybe put it on a cart that's for all of my weeded items so that I'm not putting it back on the shelf. All right. So all of that messaging, all of those alert tones, and again, guys, I know that you're not hearing the additional alert tones. Again, we don't want feedback coming through the system, but bear in mind that you will have secondary tones depending upon your preferences. Maybe you've got the trill as your check-in and the gong as your discarded item alert. You're going to hear those same tones as you're coming across these items, okay? Don't forget to keep an eye here in your transaction log as well, so we can see we're discarding an item we're moving an item to that discarded patron. We've come across a discarded copy as we're scanning. So your transaction log is going to supply you a lot of that information as you're scanning your items. Now, just like with the inventory manager, don't worry if you haven't completed your inventory for a day. It's no big deal. You'd simply just quit Alexandria. The next day, you're going to come back in and relaunch it. We're going to jump right back into our inventory book drop mode, and we're going to go ahead and start scanning where we left off. Okay, the one thing that Alexandria does not give you here in the circulation window is that last item that you scanned option when moving into inventory mode. It's another one of those nice features that inventory manager does supply for you. Okay, so it will be kind of on you once you've finished scanning for a day. Remember where you left off, come right back in and pick up where you were at. The great thing with Alexandria V6, guys, kind of as we mentioned with the circulation type of scanning, is that if you don't have an installed librarian workstation available to you on, say, like an iPad or a laptop or something like that, you always have the ability of opening up and going into that Alexandria web librarian mode, and we can do the same thing. I'm going to jump into inventory book drop mode, and then just like before, I'm going to go ahead and start scanning my items. There's a lost item. We can register it as found. And we've got a discarded item that we can go ahead and leave in our discarded section as well. Okay, so all of those features are available through the installed client, through the web librarian. So get some help. Have people bring in a laptop. They can even 10 key. So if you don't have enough scanners, go ahead and tell somebody to just put it in inventory book drop mode, and we'll go ahead and type in 3302. There's my book, Angels Sweep the Desert Floor. I've gone ahead and marked it for inventory, okay? Now, before I go in and start talking about reports and utilities, I do want to see if we've got any questions regarding scanning or circulation-based inventory. We got anything for us at the moment, Josh? I did see a lot come in.
Yes. So a really quick question from Jennifer Price. She wants to know, in the lost copy that was found, did you have to do an extra step to make it available again?
Great question. So when you're finding those lost or discarded copies, guys, in that inventory mode, let me just go ahead and scan another lost item here really quick. So the last step is you do have to confirm the displayed message. So right here, this copy barcode entered was registered as lost, hasn't been found. Now, if I hit the enter key on my keyboard, that should default to a yes. You may also need to grab your mouse and click on the yes button to go ahead and take that book drop to say the item is now available. Okay, so that's why those confirmation steps come up in the window here in circulation. In the inventory manager, there's no secondary windows, there's no processing. Basically with the inventory manager, when you get to that completion step, any items that were lost will be book dropped and found. Discarded copies or weeded items, on the other hand, will be skipped in that completion step. Okay, so the inventory manager has a little bit more control. Doing it through the circulation window, you will be required to interact with the window itself. Now, if you're using the suppression modes, on the other hand, so if I use inventory book drop suppressed and I scan one of those lost or discarded items, as you can see, I had no roll downs, it didn't do anything. It's going to go ahead and book drop that item by default. Okay, so this is where either the book drop mode or the non-book drop mode is going to help you out. If you don't want to book drop those items, just be sure that you're not using the book drop mode specifically.
Julia McGill wanted to know, if you are using inventory book drop mode, does it matter if books are in call number order?
Great question. And the best thing that I can kind of give you guys just as a general rule of thumb with the circulation window, call number order, all of those things don't really matter. You will get notes on items that are out of order. They're going to show up in the transaction log, usually with some question marks or a little pound sign or hashtag indicator that there's something different with the item that you just scanned compared to the previous item. But other than that, there's really nothing to address. So call number order isn't going to give you any flag messages. It isn't going to give you anything that way. It'll just be noted in the transaction log. If you do want to make sure that you've got things in call number order, I strongly recommend using the inventory manager so that you can get those additional alert tones and things of that nature for items that are out of order. So great question.
Lauren Barbaro also wanted to know, I have students who will turn in books after I have done inventory. Can I create a session in the inventory manager for those books, or just do it under circulation? What's the best way?
Great question, Laura. My recommendation there, go ahead and check in those items in the circulation window. Keep anything for transactions, check-ins, checkouts, go ahead and keep those in the circulation window. The beautiful thing with how Alexandria does its inventory is, case in point here, if I have a session created, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into my inventory here really quick, guys. If I have a session created and a student checks in an item within that session, when I get to my review step, because that item got checked in during my inventory session, it's going to get an updated inventory marker and will show up on all of the reports that I'm running through the inventory manager. Okay, so don't feel that you have to scan it into one specific area. I recommend keep transactions in circulation, and it's just going to go ahead and overflow into the reports. Okay, so definitely use that circulation for all of your transactions, specifically during inventory. All right, Josh, I think we should do one more quick question here before we talk reports and utilities. So anything else about the circulation window inventory stuff?
Yeah, actually, one that applies to everything. LaDonna Larson wanted to know, how do you inventory ebooks? That seems like a pretty straightforward answer.
Oh, LaDonna, wonderful question. So the first thing that I am going to kind of maybe shake a little bit of a finger at is, if you have barcode numbers on your ebooks, this is something that we actually do not recommend in Alexandria, okay? Because there is no physical copy of that ebook in your collection, having it barcoded is really only just going to throw off your inventory processes. So just let me preface everything up front. You shouldn't be barcoding your ebooks, okay? Now, in the case that you do have ebooks that have barcode numbers and things like that, I'm really going to recommend that you keep your ebooks isolated, A, onto their own policy, and then B, I'm strongly going to recommend doing inventory through the circulation window. The reason for this is that because of the nature of our inventory manager, where we're predefining call number ranges, item information, and things like that, if your ebook falls within the call number range of a designated inventory session and it's not getting scanned, those completion steps will cause that item to be declared lost, to be declared missing, whatever you're going to do it. Again, this is why we do not barcode our ebook materials, all right? So by doing it in circulation, and this is a great segue into our reports and into our utilities, by skipping over all of those items when you're doing your inventory, what happens is, in the building of the reports and of the building of the utilities, you can tell the database to ignore items of a specific policy or of a specific type. So in a case with, again, barcoded ebook materials, do manual inventory through circulation. That way you can manually create the reports and the utilities to avoid those items being kicked up to lost and discarded. And we'll give you those examples here in just a second, okay? So LaDonna, great question. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, and it'll make even more sense as we move into the next parts of our training here. So with that, we're going to go ahead and hang on to those questions, the rest of those questions, for kind of the end here while we get into our wrap up. And you know what, guys, I'm really horrible at slides. Let me kind of back up here. So we've talked about inventory manager, we talked about circulation. Just to get back on track, we're going to talk about our manual reports and our manual utilities. We're going to kind of address this all together since they're kind of in the same place. And we should be able to get these, just in one quick sweep here. All right. So again, sorry about that. I'm still working on getting better with some of my resources, but we'll make do, right? Okay. So once you've finished scanning in inventory book drop suppressed, whichever inventory mode you've been using, it's time to start doing our reports, our utilities, and all of our cleanup steps. Okay. Feel free at any time during your scanning, guys, to come in here and run these reports just to get some verification. Say I just scanned an entire section of fiction books. I want to see if I missed anything. Go ahead and take a quick second to go in and run that report and verify it. Okay. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and start off by coming up to our toolbox and opening up our reports section. As typically, when it comes to doing inventory, we want to run reports, gather some information before we do any of the cleanup and removal steps. Okay, so when we come into our reports, obviously we can always come in here and go to our all reports section and kind of do some digging. However, I'm going to strongly recommend just coming in, popping right under the copies section. If you expand that little sideways pointing caret, we can even get into just the copies inventory. Here's the reports that we're going to be looking to run. Okay, our not inventoried items would better be known as our missing items report in reference to our inventory manager. Lost items inventory, this would be any items that were in that lost category that got scanned while we were doing inventory. Then of course, inventory items are any items that we did scan when performing our inventory. There's one additional section under collection analysis where you can run your super summary. More on that here in just a minute. But for now, under copies and inventory, we're going to go ahead and address the most common report, our not inventoried items or our missing items report. Okay. Now, the biggest thing here, guys, is, as we mentioned, inventory start date. Okay. Now, if you want to do it on a section or something like that, I recommend adding the select bys for a call number range, a barcode number range, a policy, something like that. Usually you want to make sure that, again, inventory is starting on the exact same day for all reports, all utilities, everything that we're looking to run. Okay. Now, once we've got our inventory date in place, again, we can start specifying. I want to just look at the items that I've scanned in, say, my fiction range. So I'm going to come in here and select by a copied call number. And I just want to look at fiction through fiction. And again, because these are Alexandria reports, guys, get as refined as you want. I want to see fiction AAA through AZZ specifically. That's all that I've scanned today. I want to look in that one section and see what I've scanned. Go ahead and print that report. Okay, again, this is printing our missing items. With our training here, we haven't done a whole lot of scanning, so we are going to see a lot of missing items in this. But this is exactly what we're looking for. With this report, we can see information. And you know what? Let me go ahead and zoom in here a little bit, see if we can't get that a little bit bigger for everybody. So in this report, let me get to the very top here. As you can see, we've got our call numbers, titles, barcode numbers, the date the item was scanned, current statuses, as well as the location. Location would be any primary or secondary location information you have on the copies. Now, again, because we're dealing with a demo database and we just did a big manual inventory, or excuse me, inventory manager update, we are going to have a lot of items in lost. But for the most part, this is just confirmation, guys. This way I can look at this and go, you know what? I know that I saw both of our Lord Kirkle's Monkeys books out on the shelf. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go find those. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to make sure that I'm getting those scanned in inventory book drop mode. And then I can rerun the report and view the information again to make sure they're not showing up on that list. Okay. With that not inventoried items list, one of the great things that we have that you can kind of work with is down at the very bottom of our reports, just like in an item, copy information or a title information, we can see a total number count. And in the case of our inventory, we get to see the cost total of the items that are currently missing. That way we can kind of get an idea of if we're looking to replace items, ballpark, what are we looking for a replacement cost? If these are weeded items, we can kind of get an idea of how much of a cost is going to be adjusted with the weeding of those materials, etc. So, and again, guys, with those reports, one of the beautiful things is that even if you have been doing things in the inventory manager, so case in point, I went in and I completed that session for fiction AAA through GZZ. I found a couple of items after I've completed it. Go ahead and come into your circulation window, set up an inventory mode, book drop in those items. We're just going to go ahead and scan here really fast. Come on, there we go. And then once I've scanned in those items, I can go ahead and rerun that report and make sure that they're no longer showing up on that missing items report. Okay, this holds true for all of the circulated items. Students checking items back in that were checked out. All of those things are going to show up on those reports once you've gone ahead and scanned them in for inventory. So with that one, that was our missing items report. Now, as we mentioned, we've also got our inventoried items report. So that's going to be just the items that you did scan during inventory. Go ahead and run that. Again, date ranges are the biggest thing, so your inventory start date, and then any groupings that you might want as a select by. Typically, the last report that you're going to be looking to run when it comes to finishing up your inventory, this is where we're going to go into collection analysis, guys, and we're going to grab our super summary. And the super summary is a great report because it's going to look at the entire collection based upon your call number ranges and information, and it's going to just give you an overall general synopsis of everything that you're seeing. Inventoried items, missing items, collection date ranges. I mean, the information is just staggering what you're pulling with this report. Let me go ahead and zoom in there a touch. We'll open this up a little bit more. So just kind of starting from the top down, you can see we've got it classified by call number ranges, number of titles and copies. If we have titles that have no copies, we can see that count here as well. Whether or not they've been inventoried, total value, any lost items, the value of the lost items, and the discarded as well. But as you can see, it's going to cover all of your call number ranges. We can get into classifications by grouping, so fiction, biography, etc. We can even come down here and see things like checkout statistics and average years, okay? So the super summary is a wonderful report just to let you know an overall look at the entire collection, contents by policy, contents by classification, by call number, fiction, genre groupings, etc. Tons of information in that super summary. Okay. So those are really the big reports, guys. Super summaries, missing items, lost items. Once you've got all of the reports taken care of, now it's time for the cleanup. So that's going to be the last part of our inventory. So with those, we're going to be jumping into our utilities section. So we're going to talk tools and utilities here. And again, the great thing, guys, we've got some really simple utilities to look at. So because we're dealing with inventory, we're going to be looking at copy utilities. And in here, we're going to be looking to do things like, where is our checkout utility right there? Perfect. So in the case of our missing items, right, I've got a bunch of items that I didn't get scanned during inventory. I'm going to want to move those to that lost copies patron. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my lost copies in here. We're going to do it from a selection because we're going to specify by something down here in our selection options. Otherwise, we could say move from one to another. I want to move all my discarded copies to lost, something like that. Now, in order to find those items that did not get inventoried, this one's pretty straightforward. Essentially, what I'm going to do is the select by that I'm going to look for. If we come down here to my select by for all copies, I'm going to look for the one that has the inventory date option. Beautiful. Okay. So in here, we want to move items, or there's a not inventory date, select by. Not inventory date, there we go. So selecting lost copies from a selection, I want all of my items that did not get inventoried between my start date, and we're going to go ahead and say my start date was yesterday, and my ending date is today. Okay, so again, that starting date is the most important thing when it comes to doing the inventory reports and the inventory utilities. The ending date should usually always be the day that you are looking to run this because that's your current date. You can't really plan this for anything in the future. All right. Now, if you're trying to do a backlog, you could say it was, you know, I started 3 weeks ago, I ended yesterday or something like that. I strongly recommend making sure that your ending date is always the current day, though. That way, any items that students are checking in, standard transactional processes, things like that, these are going to be included in the utilities and skipped over, okay? So everything from yesterday to today, or a date range, I need everything from the 1st of January, 1/1/2019 through today. I want all those items that did not get inventoried between that date range checked out to lost, okay? So again, starting date is the most important. Once I've ran this utility, I'm going to go ahead and run this at this time. Again, we're going to see a whole bunch of items checked out to lost here, guys. If you would like to perform your archives, I definitely recommend those with version 6 customers. Version 7 has had some updates and changes done to archives. So if you're a version 7 customer, be sure to follow us in our next session later this afternoon so we can address these messages as well with you. But if I go ahead and hit yes and process, that's going to go ahead and run. And then from here, guys, it's just going to go ahead and start moving those items to the lost category, discarded, whatever I'm looking to do. And then final cleanup is always going to be done by saying purge that individual section. So for instance, come the end of my inventory, I'm going to go in and tell the system to fully remove all discarded copies because I've been weeding them out of the system and I know that they're no longer in my collection. We'll be getting to that utility here in just 1 second once this one completes. But first step is getting them categorized. That way you can then run your reports for, you know, what items have I lost, what items have I discarded, get all of the information that way. And the reason for this, again, guys, is because remember, with Alexandria, when you remove an item from the system, there is no reference to it having been there in the first place, okay? So it is really important after inventory, move items to the proper holding patron or system patron, lost, discarded, etc. Then run a report so you have all of that information. These are all the items that I lost. All right, and then the last step again would be removing that. So here we go, we just completed our checkout. I can come in here and review all that information. We got 73 pages of items that got checked out to lost. Again, we haven't done much scanning because this is a demo. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that one. And then of course, again, my last step to completing and cleaning everything up would be coming in here and saying remove all of my lost copies or all of my discarded copies, whichever one I'm looking to purge, okay? Now, when it comes to managing lost and discarded copy patrons specifically, guys, this is going to be a facility preference. Basically, it's going to be up to you and your staff to decide how you want to deal with your lost and discarded items. Discarded items, maybe you're fully removing those every year as they're weeded in materials that you know for a fact you're not going to be keeping. Maybe your lost items, you're only going to remove items that have been lost for, say, more than 2 years or something like that, okay? Each one of these utilities can be configured to address the different types and processes, or excuse me, different processes and needs of your facility specifically. But again, that is going to be up to you and your staff to determine how you would like to address those patrons. Otherwise, by simply coming here, grabbing it by the default and just hitting run, that will be a full removal of all of those items, okay? Once I've done that last step, essentially inventory is completed. I can now come in and confirm everything. If I'm looking at my Alexandria circulation window, I can come under my special tab and then go to system info. And in here, I can see all of the new copy counts, patron counts, and things like that, just to make sure that everything matches. Otherwise, all of my reports, all of the information that I've already printed from my database is going to be exactly what I'm going to be sharing with any of my staff members, any of my administrators, principals, things of that nature. So as you can see, inventory through the circulation window, manually creating your reports, manually creating your inventory, or excuse me, your utilities. These are all extremely user-friendly and straightforward. We've tried to do things like isolating the reports in their own inventory sections to make them really easy to find. Again, tools, reports, go into copies, and then inventory, and there's all your reports. So this way you're not digging, you're not trying to come in here and say, you know, search and find inventory specifically. Oops. My fingers aren't working. Inventory. Okay, invent works too. Again, with our searches, guys, these are all predictive. So even if you're not getting it in there fully, it's going to go ahead and start refining on all of those windows. All right. So as you can see, we've covered a ton of different information. We've talked about marking items lost and discarded, inventory book drop suppression modes. But overall, inventory is meant to be pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And if you guys ever have any questions with inventory, remember that you got that 24/7, 365-day your tech support coverage. So feel free to give us a call, ask us any questions. Our technicians will be more than happy to get you back on track. All right, guys, we've covered a lot of info. We're getting into that last little part here. So we're going to go ahead and open this up for Q&A. Any questions regarding manual inventory, inventory management, any of those kinds of things? Josh, what do we got?
Perfect, thank you. Kind of a quick one. Karen Koval would like to know, where do I find preferences for alert tones?
Wonderful question. So Karen, all of your preferences are found by coming into your circulation program or any window of Alexandria, going into edit and then preferences. And then in your preferences section, this will open up in the web. You're going to go under the local or the sounds area, pardon me. I was thinking of terminology changes. And then here in sounds is where you can address all of those tones, okay? These tones are universal across both the inventory manager and the circulation window. One thing that you do need to watch out for are duplicates and triplicates. So if you do have some tones used 2 or more times in here, you may need to go in and switch up some of the tones to not have it repeated more than twice. Okay, this will cut down on some of the confusion. We do have quite the bank of available tones that you can work through, but this way you can kind of very specifically specialize what tone for which action to know which item you're addressing. So edit, preferences, and then in your preferences section, you're going to go under sounds. Great question. What do we got next, Josh?
Perfect. Thank you, Jake. Another question is, will items marked lost still be viewable in Researcher?
Items marked lost in the Researcher. Okay, so what this comes down to, guys, is how your preferences are established in the Researcher. There's the short answer is no. If an item is marked lost or discarded and it's the only copy, then that title, record, and item should not show up in Researcher, okay? Now, if you have multiple copies of an item, I've got Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I've got 3 copies of it, and only 1 copy is lost. In a situation like this, then those other 2 Harry Potter books will be displaying. Just because 1 item is lost does not mean we hide the entire title record. It's only if all copies are in some sort of special status, lost, discarded, on hold, something like that, that we're not going to see those items display in the Researcher. Great question, though. Next question, Josh.
Perfect. So Mary Kazmierczak wanted to know, we use Library of Congress call numbers. What are your recommendations for settings for inventorying LC collections? Last inventory, every book was out of call number order. Any settings for LC collections?
Great question. With Library of Congress specific, you know, they should be in call number order, so long as it's kind of following the standards with, you know, the Dewey Decimal numbers or the fiction prefixes and things like that. As long as it's in proper order, we shouldn't be getting those messages. So I would say that we might want to look at that question on a one-off basis with your collection and information, ma'am. Call into our tech support, have them take a look at it with you, because, I mean, even with Library of Congress call numbers, if they're in order, we shouldn't be getting flagged. So, and when I refer to in order, it really does come down to, you know, the contents in those call number fields. Now, if your call numbers are a little bit different, title call number and copy call number off, let me grab an item with a copy call number here really quick. Here we go. So if I'm looking at this call number and this call number being off, that could cause flags in that inventory module. So this is why I say contact our customer support team and get them to look at the database with you and maybe look at some of those inventory scans and see if we can figure out what's going on with that out of call number order flag. Great question, though. What do we have next, Josh?
Okay, perfect. Teresa Schlant would like to know, I always use the circulation window information to discard as I am scanning for inventory, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, you know? If I don't do it then, when would you do a thorough check on all books in the library?
Well, really, because essentially what you're doing, we kind of mentioned earlier, and sorry, what was her name? I'll get that name here in just 1 second, but here's what's going on, ma'am. So essentially what you're saying is I'm scanning for my inventory. Let me scan an item here really quick.
Sorry, it was Teresa.
Okay, Teresa, there we go. Thank you, Josh. So Teresa, I'm scanning my item, and then you're looking at this content here in green to decide whether or not you would like to weed the item. Really, that's about the only process that you can have, because once you've decided that you want to weed, I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you're probably coming in going to discard mode, saying that I'm weeding this item, and then rescanning that exact same item. I believe it was this one, if I'm remembering right. There we go. So you're doing that process right there. And there isn't really anything that we can change with your process specifically. The only thing that I could maybe recommend is, before you even get to the inventory step, you could go in and run some reports to find out all of that information. So again, I'm looking at my inventory book drop scan. And so here in my inventory book drop, I can see, you know, the published date, the last used date, a session date, life to date usage. All of this information you could report, say, a week, a month, 2 months before you begin your inventory. And then based upon this information, You could then create a transaction script, or you could even just get ahead of it and check these items out to discard before you start your inventory. That way, when you are doing your inventory, you're just scanning the item, hearing the tone, and pulling it off the shelf to set it aside. Because of the specific way that you are doing your inventory, ma'am, there's not a different process that we can bring in unless you wanted to just kind of address the overall process as a whole. So what you're doing is really about the best option that we can give you right now. So great question, though.
Perfect. Thanks, Jake. Also, people would like to know, will this be available later as a recorded session?
Oh, absolutely, guys. So if this is kind of the first training workshop that you're getting in here with us on, one of the things that we've been doing with our Alexandria trainings is everything is getting recorded, everything is getting backlogged, and we're putting it all into our support centers, our YouTube channels, anywhere that we can put our video content to make it available to you guys. You will see this available to you. All right. The great thing with joining the session live or even registering for the session beforehand is that we will be emailing you guys directly a link with all of the information, the viewable video, everything that you're going to need to see to go back and review the session a second time. So don't worry, you're going to have more options to come in and see it again. And then, you know, you might even see some shorter training videos spawn from this in the near future as well. So great question.
Perfect. And I did want to say to everyone, thank you so much for your patience. We had a lot of questions today. I wasn't able to get to everyone's question. So if you do have any remaining questions that are a little bit more specific to your unique situation, do make sure to reach out to our customer support team so that they can help walk you through it on your own time and with them. Sometimes it's best for us to have that phone call and remote into your computer and work with you specifically. We will also be releasing a FAQ afterwards that will have more of a general answer to a lot of the questions everyone asked. So that will be a hopefully supplementary to the recorded session as well. Otherwise, thanks very much for your time today, everyone.
All right. So with that, Josh, do we have any last questions before we let our guys go this afternoon? Anything else that came in that we want to address?
Yeah, if you want to, you could actually, for Shannon Ziegler, give us one quick little description of the difference between inventory and inventory book drop. Make sure that's clear.
Wonderful. Okay. So to address your question, inventory and inventory book drop, it's really pretty simple, guys. So in inventory mode, so in standard inventory, as I mentioned, we're scanning an item to update our inventory marker. Again, let me grab an item with a copy here really quick. So when we scan in inventory mode, we're essentially only updating this marker. Now, in the off chance that say, you know, Jimmy Smith still has this book checked out, if I'm scanning in inventory mode, all it's going to do is change this marker. The item will still show up in the system as checked out to Jimmy Smith. Okay. With the inventory book drop mode, I'm not only going to update the inventory marker, but I'm also going to book drop the item back into the system and mark it as available. So right here, you can see our One World manga book, barcode 3000 is currently lost. Inventory mode isn't going to change anything. It's going to go ahead and leave it lost. It's just going to say that we got a new inventory date of today. Whereas inventory book drop mode, so if I actually equal and enter, you can see nothing happened. We're still lost. We're still checked out. Now, if I come in here and change to inventory book drop and then scan barcode 3000, I get my message saying the book has lost. Has it been found? I say yes. My item is now available. Okay. That's the only difference between book drop and non-book drop modes. In the case that, you, like we said, you're looking to weed materials while you're performing inventory, you're going to want to use inventory or inventory book drop mode. This way you'll get those additional alert messages and informational pieces regarding items in discarded statuses and lost statuses, etc. Okay. The difference with the suppression modes, guys, is you won't get any of those controls. It's just going to go ahead and update inventory markers only. All right. In the case of inventory book drop suppressed, update the inventory, book drop it into the system, make it available no matter what, even if it was lost or discarded. Okay. So wonderful. All right, guys. Well, that's going to kind of take up the last of our training time that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you guys got some wonderful information out of our training workshop today. As a quick heads up, we are going to be sending out a survey. Let us know how we did. Let us know what we can do to improve. As we come into the end of the school year through the month of May, we will take a little bit of a break throughout the summertime, and then we're going to be right back into it, coming back next school year with more training workshops available to you. Again, it's been a real pleasure working with everyone today. I know Josh and I have had a whole lot of fun. We look forward to any additional questions or comments that you might have in your continued use of Alexandria, and we hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.